Welcome to the Chief Endurance Officer Podcast. I'm your host, Greg McDonough. Each week, we hear real-time stories from athletes and CEOs on how to maximize performance through an endurance mindset. Let's get started. Well, welcome to the Chief Endurance Officer Podcast. I'm your host, Greg McDonough. I'm super excited about today's guest. She is a leadership facilitator. She has a passion to help leaders find their purpose, joy, and freedom through coaching, group facilitation, and workshops. She has an amazing ability to work with people to accomplish any goal, which is a hallmark of her style and focus. She's the chapter chair and facilitator for the Women's President's Organization, president of Leadership Alchemy. Please welcome Amy Castronova. Hey, Amy, how are you?
Good. How are you, Greg?
Doing great. Thanks. It's wonderful to have you on the show. So we love to talk about endurance and endurance leadership on this podcast. And my favorite question to ask is, Amy, tell me about how your endurance mindset has impacted your life unexpectedly.
I would say my career. I was previously the owner of a technical writing company that taught people how to use medical devices. And now I lead and coach entrepreneurs, as you just said, through a lot of transformational experiences that help them grow their leadership, rediscover themselves and their purpose, and really kind of shift to a life of more fulfillment and alignment. So that was kind of unexpected for me. I studied engineering and business in college. So a technical writing company made a lot of sense, with my skill set at the time. And so never would I have imagined that I would now be, using my more creative side of my brain, as a coach and as a trainer and as a facilitator, to read people's energy and get them to open up about their struggles or their fears, and just really help them understand what is holding them back. And that really was all because of my endurance mindset.
That's awesome. Let's dig into that a little bit deeper. Like when did that shift for you? When did you tell yourself that, hey, I need to make a big change in what I'm doing in my career and my passion? Like walk us through that story.
Yeah. It kind of came organically. So we walk back through the story. I'll walk you way back to probably when I was 10, 12 years old. It really was my first experience with endurance. I played ice hockey as a kid. And so I was trained to sprint for 90 seconds every 3 minutes or so over 3 periods. I had to give everything that I had in my tank, but still make sure I had enough energy at the end of the game, just in case we had an overtime period. This was no ultra marathon. I'm pretty sure hockey is not considered one of the top endurance sports. But it sure felt like that when you're emptying and then refilling your tank like every few minutes. And so if I look back on, my endurance mindset and that ultimately how it led to those things you just asked about, my approach to life and business is really similar to those sprints. So whether the goal was to, at one point in time, my goal with my technical writing business, was to pivot and refocus the business and the company, completely on an entirely new industry. Another time, we were focused on doubling the size of the company. At one point, it was selling the company. And so at each one of those stages, I had to learn and then master a new skill set. And so whether it was by default or from that training years and years ago, my approach was really to just handle it in sprints. And so the sprints were much longer than those 90 seconds. Maybe they were like 1 or 2 or 3 years. But my mindset was always to just focus on the right next thing. And I found that when I focused on the right next thing, I didn't waste energy worrying too far ahead. And I could sustain for the long haul.
Powerful. I'm curious, as you would go through those sprints, both in your hockey career days and now through business, does the goal get bigger between each sprint or what you're focusing on for each sprint?
Not always. I have learned a lot about energy. In the past 7 years, I've actually studied energy. And one of the things that I know about my energy is that it's actually functions best. I'm more productive. I do things that are more aligned and right for me when I actually am responding to things in the moment. So this is probably why the sprint method worked really well for me all those years. I kind of wish I knew this, prior to 7 years ago, because gosh, I had started, these sprints in my business started 20 years ago. And so I guess it's pretty validating. But what I have learned is that, responding to things in the moment are, maybe it's a challenge or an opportunity that, here's the right next, the next best thing for me to do and the thing that feels right. And so we're going to focus on that. And we're going to focus on that for as long as it takes. And then inevitably, when we've conquered that or solved that, there's always something else to respond to. Maybe it's a request from somebody. Maybe it's, that phone call with, hey, I have a new opportunity for you. Will you partner with me? Have you ever thought about selling your business? There's always something, it could be a crisis as well, always something to respond to. So I have tried to stay disciplined and not forcing the vision and creating all of those next steps as bigger things to conquer, and more about just responding to what is showing up right now.
That's really helpful. And I'd love to get in a little bit deeper. You said 7 years ago, you discovered how to manage your energy.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about that. Tell us about energy management, your discovery, give the audience a sense of what you mean by that.
Yeah. So it really happened out of me just feeling depleted, exhausted, on the edge of burnout from time to time. And this nagging feeling that I was meant to be doing more. By more, I mean, like there's something more for me. Being the owner of Novatech Communications isn't the only thing that I'm meant to do here in my lifetime. And so I really couldn't shake that. And so that's really what kind of put me on this quest to really understand, well, what is my purpose? How do you determine what your purpose is? If I'm doing these things and I'm putting all my energy into them, but they don't feel like I don't feel satisfied by it, what's that all about? And so that's what kind of led me into studying energy. In particular, when I talk about my use of energy, I'm referring to a practice that I use called quantum human design, which identifies different types of energy. Each of us has an aura and an energetic field, at which people feel that are around us, and also how we operate. And so by learning a lot more about those different energy types, I was able to understand how to use my energy the right way. As an example, right? Not having that, trying to push a boulder uphill because my peers are telling me that success in business is, having $1 billion exit, or that, I had a really good market and then, strategy that I should just stick with it because this company could be really successful. Or wow, that, I keep my company because I want it to be the legacy for my children, right? There's a lot of, there's some examples, right? Things that you probably hear, Greg, too, that, entrepreneurs and business owners, have a lot of these ideas and beliefs around. And so it's really easy to kind of be programmed and conditioned to kind of think that that's what success means. And that's really where I was just feeling like an energetic dissonance. And I'm not sure I would call it that at the time, but it was definitely feeling like a resistance. I was feeling resistance. I was feeling resistance in what I was doing. I wasn't feeling aligned. That was a word I would use at the time, but I didn't really know, why or what that meant. And then when I learned that, I was doing things because the decisions I was making was because of the playbook or, someone else's aspirations. And I really learned to listen to myself and use my energy in a way to serve me is really what made all those unexpected changes.
That's awesome. So I suspect we've got audience members who are having that feeling right now, that I put this energy, put my life into doing X. I don't feel satisfied. I feel kind of lost. help them with that first step for self-discovery? Like, what should they be thinking or doing or tackling next to kind of break through that feeling?
Yeah. One of the first things is really to kind of differentiate between the thoughts and ideas that are coming from your mind, like your imagination, all that strategic thinking that we're taught to do. And again, remember, I was trained to be an engineer. So for many years, I just lived in that place of analytics, and no one ever taught me to listen to my intuition. What was intuition? Like, what did it feel like? What did it sound like? How do I know what it is? Can I trust it? Those were a lot of the things that I was asking and wondering, and eventually just started to experiment with. So, if for someone who's really feeling that dissonance, that resistance, really being able to separate, even if it means, writing down on paper, right? These are all the things that I think. And then these are all the things that I feel, or sitting in silence, getting out in nature, and really just tuning into, what are the messages that you are feeling and having that just feel really true to you. They don't need to be these like beaming messages from the universe that just get planted in your head. Your body knows a lot. Right? In fact, I was coaching somebody yesterday who had a situation. I said, what is a challenge or situation that you're currently facing? And they told me about something that they had to decide within the next 3 days. They were flying across the world and had to make this decision, and they hadn't even done it yet. And so in that moment, I got that person into their body, eyes closed, really turned off the brain, and was able to help them, really like in 10 minutes, find out what really was true for them and not what they think they should do. I should probably call this person, I could hire someone to do this for me. It would be the smart thing to do. What would advance my career the most is if I filled that time by, doing this. And I think so often we are programmed to do that. And that was a big part of my story. I bought my business when I was 20. And so to me, everything was an opportunity. If someone asked me to go to a networking event, will you speak here? Will you be on this board? Everything was a yes, because that inevitably in my mind, right, the programming, the track in my mind said, you should say yes, because this is a good opportunity. I can't tell you why, but it's a good opportunity, and it will lead to something else. Right. It's good for you to put yourself out there. It's good for you to meet new people. It's good for you to get involved in other organizations. It's good for the company to have visibility, all the reasons. And so I think that's eventually what led to a lot of that, depletion and exhaustion. Was I was just saying yes, 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 without ever stopping and listening to, what does Amy want? And does Amy want to spend her energy doing this instead of her energy focusing on, perhaps one of the challenges in her business, or later in life, my energy on my family. It was just a lot of that programming and that conditioning of what we should do. And we get stuck in the head and not so much listening, to the body will tell you, really what's right for you.
So I'd love to get into the feelings that you were having when you were making that transition from being programmed to following your intuition, because that's got to be a really difficult stage, right? There's got to be a lot of looking back, a lot of second guessing. Talk to us about those feelings and how you handled that transition.
Yeah. I think I had mentioned I was kind of studying this for about 7 years. When it really, so I was kind of experimenting with it. But when my feelings of frustration, just that like lack of alignment, got to its kind of peak, is really when I said, I have nothing to lose. Right? I feel so like out of my body right now. Right. And that's not to say that I didn't enjoy, what I did. Right. When I bought this business, it was a hell yes for me. Right. When each and every one of those stages, when I was doing something, new and learning a new skill set and mastering a skill set, that was exciting. And that was that was right for me at the time. Then I got to a point where I was just like, wow, this doesn't feel energizing, and which eventually led to, gosh, this feels like something I just don't want to do, right? Feeling some resistance, then sometimes feeling some resentment. And that is when, I got to the point where I said, okay, well, what I do know is that I need to be using my energy a little bit differently and not making decisions off of spreadsheets and what other people say is the smart or right or strategic or quintessential entrepreneurial thing to do. And I need to just actually tune into my energy, like physically, tune into it and make decisions based on, as I've said, what my body's telling me, which seemed really bizarre. Again, for, someone who studied to be an engineer. But I thought, I'm feeling so disconnected right now that, I will try anything to, really feel more in alignment and figure out what's going on here. And so that is really when I took those steps to, which interestingly was at a really, is what led to a bunch of those changes. It led to, the next thing being to, merge my company, then to sell my company, to exit, a year later. And it led to, people asking me to be their executive coach. I train lots of entrepreneurs through the Entrepreneurs Organization. I facilitate retreats. You mentioned in the bio that, I'm the chair of actually a couple chapters of the Women Presidents Organization. Now, I teach people how to use their energy correctly for the best results. And none of that, I wasn't doing any of that. In fact, this was only like 18 months ago that I exited the business. Right. So half of those things I just listed, I wasn't even doing before, when my energy was all focused on teaching people how to use medical devices. Yeah. So it's pretty powerful if you're willing, to experiment. And for me, it was also just a little faith.
Absolutely. Amy, you mentioned disconnected a handful of times. Mm-hmm. Disconnected from what? Is it yourself?
Yeah.
Like it's just a gut feeling, or is it the community around you, your family? Like, give us the what behind that disconnected.
Yeah. From myself. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Feeling like I'm going through the motions. I'm doing the things by the playbook, but this doesn't light me up anymore. I don't think this is my purpose. I think I might be made for something more. Right? I don't think running this business is the only thing I'm going to do in my lifetime. And it feels like right now is that time to shift. So I know I'm saying feel and not sharing an emotion word with it, but it definitely was like a sensation, a knowing. It was more of a knowing in my body that it was time, but the feeling I was feeling was like this disconnected, disconnected from like that authentic self, frustration, resentment, those types of things.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Shifting gears a little bit, you mentioned you sold the business about 18 months ago. Walk us through that emotion. I mean, what was the inside like between the time you decided to, I guess you merged first and then ultimately sold? Take us through that, because I've had a handful of guests who have sold their businesses, and their perception of what it was going to be like after the fact was completely different than it was, before the fact was completely different than actuality when they got to the other end of the process. And I'd be curious what your perception was going into the process and what it is now after going through a sales process.
Yeah. I think I had, not think. I know I went in with my eyes wide open. Being a member of peer groups for 18 years, I'm in 2 peer groups, had been the entire time. And so I had heard lots of stories of, what other business owners go through in terms of the process of selling and, what that looks like for them afterwards. And I don't know about you, but the theme I hear is that it is very difficult to remain in a business when you don't have full control and authority, like perhaps you may have done in the past. So that was a big factor that was weighing on me when trying to make the decision, especially going back to that time when I was feeling so frustrated and resentful, and there's something else and there's something more. but I wanted my baby to be taken care of. Right. I had all these employees working for me. We have these clients that I wanted to take care of. I didn't want to just walk away. I wanted to find a good home, for that, someone who's going to nurture that and take care of that. And so, I found what I believe was the right person. We merged the companies, together, which actually made them more scalable, for future sale. That future sale came like 11 months later. So it was pretty fast. When I sold, and then we sold again 11, 12 months later. So that part of the process was pretty much a roller coaster. But the process for me, it ended up being a gradual exit. It was, selling to someone I knew that could take care of my baby, and we co-led that together. Then when I felt like, we were almost to the point that I thought I was gonna be ready to let go, we sold it again. And then it was a completely different company. It was global. It was, large leadership team. For a while, I was the only woman on the leadership team. It was, very different industry, serving very different markets that, just did not feel like the right home for me. So that was another time where my energy, and now that I had been really practiced and actually, using my energy correctly and tuning into it and listening to what it was telling me, it's time to leave, which wasn't easy, when I told the people around me, especially in my household, that it's, I'm done. I'm just done. And that doesn't make a whole lot of logical sense to other people. But I knew that was, now that I had really used, my energy correctly for a couple of years up to this point, I mentioned before that, kind of like sprinkled with a little faith, early on. But now that I had done this to make these big decisions, to merge, to sell, to sell again, to stay on. And now in this moment of my story that I'm sharing, the moment of, nope, time to leave. I knew enough that I could trust that. And it, again, didn't make logical sense to a lot of other people. And so a lot of people were trying to get into the brain, right? Tell me all the things that I should be doing. But I just knew that the right next step for me was to leave. And going back to, kind of when I talked about my intro story, that was it. That was the right next step. I did not know what was going to come after that. I could sit all day and create business plans. But I knew that would be, because I've done that many times in the past, that I would feel accomplished and, that I achieved something, that I was smart, that I, had a little safety net. But at the end of the day, I may not even go through with that business plan. So my focus at the time was this right next step is to leave. Once I left and had a clean slate, then it was time to focus on that right next step, not what am I going to do? How am I going to make money? Who would my clients be? Let me set that up first, which I know is contrary to a lot of people, but what a lot of people do. And, it was very I was very privileged to be in a situation where I didn't have to, worry so much about that. But that was, where my mindset of endurance is one step at a time. If I focus there and use my energy correctly at each phase, I will end up, for the long haul, get where I'm going.
That's very well said. And I've got a couple people in mind that I need to send this to right away. Amy, shifting gears a little bit, talk to us about you. You got into engineering, how that manifests itself, and then walk us through. You've told a lot about your story so far, but I'd love to kind of know the barbells a little bit more on the front end and a little bit more on the back end, and ultimately talk about what you're doing and how you're helping others.
Yeah. So, all right, the short summary. I was good at math and science, right? Isn't that why everybody goes into engineering? Unless maybe you want to build airplanes. I have a lot of friends who do like to do that. But I was obsessed with bridges too. I also had a big fascination on bridges growing up. So, that led me to, an engineering school. I also wanted to, play ice hockey. So I found, a school where I could do both. I decided to do the engineering and business program. This is Clarkson University has a program called Interdisciplinary Engineering and Management, because I was mindful enough to know that I wasn't going to be designing all day, even if I love bridges, but I am a people person. I like to lead. So I really envisioned myself kind of working somewhere on the supply chain where I knew a lot about the technical work that was being done, but also, doing more, of the leading. So, which of course you don't do when you first get out of school. But that was really, what kind of drove me to that program and to study engineering. And then a life event happened where my mom suddenly got sick and she passed away within 3 months. And she had a technical writing company that she had started years before that she really didn't have any intention of me or my younger brother working in the business. And that's not something she ever talked about. In my quest to determine what school I wanted to go to and what I wanted to study, there was never any conversation about, well, do you want to do technical writing? Or do you want to be part of the business of the future? Like, she never, ever pushed that or talked about that. But suddenly, we had a business that was left in her estate to the family. My father worked in HVAC, kind of doing heating and air conditioning, very different than a professional service, technical writing. I had just turned 19 and my brother was 16. So we really didn't know what to do with the business. But my mother was a very smart, savvy person. And when she got sick, she did have lots of conversations with her employees and clients and had identified somebody who was willing to run the business until we decided what to do with it as a family. So I offered to work there for a year to help my family decide what to do with it. So I worked at the business in between my the semester or the year there. This would have been she passed away my freshman year. My sophomore year, I worked in the business and still went to school. Then my junior year, I decided to buy the business because after being there for a year, and I actually did a lot of the finances. I did all the accounts receivable, payable. I did all the, a lot of the client meetings. I sat with the employees. So I learned the work that they were doing and really just kind of got that bird's eye view. And my conclusion and recommendation to my family 12 months later was, from what we can tell, right, the business is really healthy. It's making money. The employees are satisfied. They have jobs. They're not worried. They're not going anywhere. They've worked with this leadership team for a while. The clients, as long as they're getting the same service, I don't see any they don't seem to be shaky at all. And so that my recommendation was to, keep the business in the family and that I would buy it. So that is how I bought a business when I was 20 and really shifted from engineering to technical writing. Which I did not have an aspiration, but of course I picked up some I'm still in school, so I picked up some courses in that. But as the owner of a business, you often are not the one actually doing the work. So my focus was really on the business aspects of that, which is what led to one of the milestones I mentioned, kind of pivoting the business to focus on the medical device industry. When I bought it, it was focused on maybe we were serving 7 different industries. I didn't think that was much of a strategy. Switched our focus there. And that's really, I guess, if I go to some of the historical milestones, that were some of those that really led up to the remainder that we talked a lot about in my, following my energy, which was, okay, well, I've accomplished these things in the business. And so I led it independently for 17 years. And then merged it and sold it with another technical communications company. And we sold it a year later to a software company. And I stayed on there for a year. And then I exited without a plan 18 months ago.
And I'm curious, the technical writing, were you writing manuals for those medical devices?
Yes. Yeah. We were writing the instruction manuals and creating training programs for the end users, sometimes for the sales reps, sometimes for the field service engineers, so they know how to fix and maintain, that equipment. Depending on what the device was, the audience would change.
Got it. Years ago, I owned a publishing services company. That's why I asked.
Yeah.
So let's bring it to today. Talk to us about your business and what you're doing, your coaching service, who your clients are. Give us the spiel on that, please.
Yeah. I get really lit up by working with groups, especially groups of entrepreneurs. So I do a lot of leadership facilitation and training. And interestingly, in these past 18 months, I have had a number of people just very unsolicitedly ask me to coach them. So now I am finding alignment with the title of coach as well. So I really am, entrepreneurs and leaders that I'm coaching, I'm helping them, rediscover their purpose, find flow in what they're doing, and fulfillment in their work and in their lives. And so a lot of them, the energy work has actually come into play quite a bit for each of those. People who I coach in terms of teaching them how to use their energy correctly so that they can sustain their productivity, so that they can sustain and not burn out, which is very common among entrepreneurs that you pointed out earlier. And also so that they can stay vital and fulfilled and not get to that point of, why am I doing this? I resent my business. When I was in South Africa, 5 months ago or so, I had someone say, yeah, I just feel really lost. I feel like I have fallen out of love with my business. And that was a really interesting way, to put it. So people who are kind of in those situations, this energy work can really help. So I guess I'm an energy coach.
There's lots of us out there with that commentary. At the moment, I'm not one of them, but I have been from time to time. Yeah. What was your follow-up when that person said, I've lost the love for my business, I've lost the energy for it?
Yeah.
What's your next comment? Give us a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, I immediately went into coach mode, right? Let's unpack that, right? Let's find out where and why. Help me. Because first and foremost, I just wanted to understand, right? This was just a peer. We were just having a conversation on a bus. And so I really wanted to understand. And then as it became clear that this person, could use some support, I shared with them, a tool that I have to determine what your energetic type is. It's actually for free on my website. Anyone can go do that. And so we, ran the chart and actually, sat down for dinner one night, and I kind of walked through, some of the things that could be useful at that point in time for that person, about, either, finding the things, let's see, without getting too technical about the energy pieces, there are ways that we can be reignited just in terms of what we do day to day. So sometimes we fall out of love because we're not doing the things that light us up anymore. And there's ways that we can work around it and change that. Other times we fall out of love because, the business has changed and grown. And so we need to kind of redefine ourselves in that ecosystem. And other times we fall out of love because we have changed as a person and we have different desires and needs. And so that was really kind of what we, it was just a short conversation, but I think I was able to, give that person, a tool and then start a conversation about some things that might not have been conscious to that person before, because they did not know this information about their energy and how to use it. Right.
That's powerful. One of the tricks that I use, is in my following week, I always try to plan something that's fun for me. And it could be going for a hike or playing golf or just meditating. And then I find that during the week, I have something to look forward to. And so it makes, if there's any sort of struggle or pain point during my current week, it's like, oh, you know what? Next Tuesday at 3:00, I'm going to go sit by the river and read for 45 minutes. And it sort of helps get you through the current moment.
Yes. I think that's so good that you have that practice. You said in my intro, that my business helps people find, purpose, joy, and freedom. And joy is not a word that I actually hear people say a lot. And of course, you have that information because that's what I actually say to people. But I don't hear entrepreneurs use that word a lot. But what I do know about the energy, what I know about the entrepreneurial experience from my own, is that it's so easy to just get, caught up in the business. And even when you're not in the office, you're thinking about it. It's really hard to turn it off. It's all consuming. And many entrepreneurs have lost, their hobbies. It's great if your hobby is, long distance running. And that's also your mode of stress relief. It's something that you do. And it's also a daily habit. And it's a good, morning routine. All the boxes, entrepreneurs like to check. That's great if that actually is your hobby. Because we like to kind of maximize and check all those boxes. But I find that a lot of people just don't have let go of the things that bring them joy. And joy is such a big piece of this. When you're using your energy correctly, you are lit up. I said that before, like that's the best way to describe it. You're not just like happy and excited, but you're on fire, you're lit up, you're excited about what you're doing. You're kind of turned on. And that's useful, in our business too, when we kind of have that fire. But joy is a big ingredient, for that. And I think a lot of people kind of overlook the fact that, you got to have something in your life that makes you happy. And that's for you and is not about the business.
And it's, that's a great indicator, right? As you're thinking through your day, your week, your month, it's at what points was I feeling the most joy? When am I the most joyful? And really be sort of intuitive about those feelings to help sort of unpack like
Yes.
what you be doing, what should you be doing? That's an interesting way of putting it, using the word joy. And as you kind of reflect on your week, say, yeah, well, Tuesday I was really joyful. What was I doing at 7 a.m. that was making me so happy? And kind of making that part of your routine.
Absolutely. Yeah, another business owner that I coach, her guideposts based on her energy, her guideposts are satisfaction and frustration. And so a lot of what I've been doing with her is, okay, when do you feel the most satisfied? Right. Similar to the question that you just said, okay, in this past week, when did you feel satisfied? What made you feel the most frustrated? We really dig into those things because those are the guideposts for how to use her energy. If you're using it correctly, you're making decisions that are going to bring you more satisfaction, right? When we commit to things that we actually don't want to do, right? I don't want to go to that networking event, but I think it's, the right thing for my business. And I go anyway. I feel frustrated that I'm not home with my kids. I feel frustrated that, it's the check-in line is taking long and now I only have, 30 minutes. I feel frustrated that the person I wanted to talk to, isn't there, whatever it might be. And it's not to say that people aren't going to feel frustration. But when we are doing things in alignment, there actually is a lot more ease and flow. And it just turns out better, right? When we go against that energy, right? The energy is trying to protect us, right? The energy knows what's right and we're pushing against it. And so we're forcing things. And when we force things, we meet resistance.
Very well said. For your facilitation and trainings, is it a different topic or different exercise or give the audience a sense of what you facilitate? If somebody is in the audience and has a group or they're part of a chapter or they're part of, a mastermind group, to walk us through some of the training and workshops that you do.
Yeah. So I do a lot with peer groups, right? So for the Entrepreneurs Organization and the Women Presidents Organization, I do a lot of facilitation within that ecosystem, right? Some of the standard products there. But I also do a lot of facilitation for, actual the entrepreneurs, their own businesses, for groups that are going on retreats and looking for new and different things. And so I have a number of programs. I do love doing like custom designing, programs for folks. In fact, right now I'm creating one around resilience. Yeah. So I do a lot of, kind of custom creation, but a lot of my signature programs are related to this behavior. Right. So how to use the operating manual that you were never given. How to create more flow in your life.
Fantastic. Slight change of topic. Amy, what do you do for hobby? What's your joyful hobby?
Yeah, I love to boat. Boating is my relaxation. It's also my hobby. I bought my first boat when I was single. So for me, it was like a very empowering thing. In fact, a lot of my friends would say, who's going to drive the boat? I would say me. So that is something we live on the lake where I live in New York. And although it's a very short season, that is, one of my favorite things to do. Also skating. I don't play competitive hockey anymore, but all winter long, you can find me at the rink. I've taught my two little girls, to ice skate, because I don't care if they play hockey, but you can't play if you don't know how to skate. Mm-hmm. So we do a lot of skating as a family. And I'm a big exerciser. That is my stress relief also, but it has always been, I think, from being an athlete my entire life, it has been, one of my favorite things to do every day.
Awesome. So audience member wants to get in touch with you. What's the best way? Email, social media platform of choice?
Yeah. Email, or also the, contact form on my website. So my email is hello@amycastronova.com. It's not tricky for me to spell, but for many people, there's a letter that is always mistaken. So that is Amy Castronova is AMYCastronova.com. And my website is similar, www.amycastronova.com. I mentioned earlier that there is a page. It's actually amycastronova.com/human design that will bring you to a page where you can actually find out your own energetic type. And then I also have a contact form on the contact page, which is a great way to shoot me a note about anything that you're interested in.
Fantastic. And I'll be on that website in about 10 minutes. Amy, thank you for coming on the show. I really enjoyed our conversation at the beginning. We were talking about listening to your intuition, and you're sharing your stories of your endurance mindset and how that was built in these 90-second sprints when you're going into each period of your ice hockey youth. That was a lot of fun. Your comments around the hell yeah, like when you started your business, it was a hell yeah. And when you exited your business, it was a hell yeah, but you didn't know what plan B was going to be. I thought that was really inspiring. And a lot of us struggle with the over planning what step B, C, D, and E is going to be before actually getting off the starting block on block A. But lots of super content. Audience members, if you got some value out of the show, please share this with your friends and your family and your community. We want this message to expand. Obviously, like the show down in the subscription box. But again, Amy, thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, Greg.
I appreciate your energy.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to the Chief Endurance Officer podcast. To hear more inspiring stories and strategies around the endurance mindset, be sure to subscribe below or visit us at chiefinduranceofficer.com. Until next time, keep pushing those limits.